All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Muzzle Is Off Podcast. I am your host, Nakia Monet, and we got my special guest here, Tamara P. Fields. Tamara, say hi to the people.
Hey to the people. Hi, everybody.
I know y'all used to us coming on at about 7 p.m. Eastern time, but we had to adjust our time schedule for today because the good Tamara P. Fields is on the Central Time. So we are now at 7 p.m. Central Time for today and 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So thank y'all for holding out and waiting for us. But on this episode of the Muzzle Is Off Podcast, we are still talking about mental health, mental wealth, and we're just going to go a little bit deeper into the subject matter, but we really want to talk about the road to healing. We really want to talk about resources that we would need. And if you would pay attention to what is scrolling, you will see that what is scrolling is actual telephone numbers that you would need if you find yourself to be in a crisis. That information will also be in the chat because I believe that it is important that we provide you with the information that you would need if you found yourself in a crisis situation, right? Oftentimes, we might not know who we need to call. And I know a lot of folks be like, call Jesus, but sometimes you need to call an actual hotline to speak to a person. Okay. This is why they are there. This is why they are employed. And this is why we can go seek help. Okay. So let us unpack this. And Mother Tamara P. Fields, introduce yourself to the people. Tell the people who you are. Tell them about you. Just give the people you.
All right. Hey, everybody. So I am Tamara P. Fields. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I own a group practice in Killeen, Texas. I have been in the field of social work more than I care to share because then you guys will try to figure out my age. But I own a group practice. I specialize in providing services to children and families impacted by Child Protective Services. So that is our exclusive population that we provide services to the adults and to the children. With the goal of family reunification, working with the parents to learn the skills that they need to learn in order to get their children back. So that is what I do in my profession. I am also the branch chair for the National Association of Social Workers, the Central Texas branch. And so I am over the social workers in my area, constantly collaborating, looking for leaders in the community. So that is what I do there. So that's about it. So that's me in a nutshell. Oh, I guess you would care where I graduated from, maybe not, but I am a graduate of the University of Chicago. And so I've been in the field many, many years. I have tons of experience, tons of training. So that's me in a nutshell.
Well, come on, nutshell of you, because that's a lot of you in that whole nutshell. That's like mother. Hello.
That's that magic.
Hello. She encompasses many things type magic. Okay. And if you didn't know, now you wholly know who mother is. Listen.
Harriet.
Hello. Y'all gonna hear me call her mother because that is what we affectionately call Tamara P. Fields. We call her mother because when mother comes on the scene, mother gets you good and together. All the way.
All the way.
She does not leave not one stone unturned. And if it is unturned, she's going to turn it over and show you what it is and then tell you, okay, now we need to unpack this and deal with this. And that is who mother is. And mother does it very well.
Yes.
So, thank you, mother, for introducing yourself to the people.
Absolutely.
Because you do a whole lot more than what I even know that you do.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So thank you. So let's get into this conversation then. Lately, for the past month, we've really been talking about mental health, mental wealth, and we've really been trying to break what is known as the stigma across people, from people, preventing even themselves from seeking help, right?
Yes.
Sometimes people don't even realize that they actually do need help, right? What would you think is a sign for someone to tell that they actually need help? Outside of, okay, the typical sign that we talked about for this past month has been, you just don't seem like yourself. What else is there besides seeming like yourself?
So there are events that happen in your life, right? when someone dies, when you lose a job. So when we think about mental health, sometimes people think that the only time you need to be in counseling is if you're about to have a nervous breakdown. Well, that's not actually true. You've missed the point of actually needing to present yourself to a counselor. You may need a higher level of care at that point, right? You need a hospitalization. And so anytime that you have any incident, here's the thing, is that therapy is not just about dealing with your life when your life has gone really, really bad. It is also about just dealing with your life when you need to make adjustments to situational changes, right? Losing a parent, having a parent diagnosed with a terminal illness, being diagnosed with a terminal illness yourself, having a sick child, losing someone, losing a job. So there's lots of things that you should present yourself to therapy about. When I talk to people about presenting themselves for therapy, I also talk about doing a mental wellness checkup annually. Every other checkup, we do it annually, right? We go to the dentist, we go to the doctor. Why are we not seeking out that same thing to have our minds checked out? And maybe there's nothing. That is the purpose of the professional, to make the assessment of whether services are needed or not. So if you don't ever check in, then you may not ever know. Just consider that there could be a better way of life for you. But because you think you have it all together and nothing on the surface seems to be bothering you, nothing bothers you until it triggers you.
Hello. And them triggers are important, because folks have me triggered all week thus far, and it's only 3 days into it. However, it's important to recognize your good triggers and learn how to process through those triggers. And that's a lot of what we're talking about as well, how to process through triggers, because it's not the fact that, and I know I joke a lot and I say folks trigger me, but they don't know that it's an actual trigger. I know that it is, because I know that once something is said, it then registers within me. So it's not me to lash out against said person. It's me to say, okay, this is a trigger and why.
Right. You have to know what your triggers are, because your trigger really is about something that happens or something that is said that you then perceive as a threat, right? There's a perceived threat that occurs. And at that point, you want to lash back out. So something will physically tell you that this made me really uncomfortable. But oftentimes we will ignore these things, or we go off about things that don't make sense, right? Because there's something deeper there. But if we're not aware of what our own triggers are, oftentimes we miss it. And then we're out here just looking like we are completely out of control, completely out of touch. They're like, that girl just do too much, because no one knows your experiences but you. And there are some experiences that even you mentally in a conscious way don't even know, because you've tucked it so far away that your body is the thing that's constantly responding to that trigger. And you're just like, whoa, what was that? And oftentimes we just kind of be like, well, I was just tripping, or we take something to sedate that feeling, right? Let me just go ahead, smoke a blunt. Let me go ahead, have me a cup of wine so I can just, kind of chill out and get rid of that. And that's not an appropriate way to necessarily process when you have a trigger that's constantly coming up. You just sort of sedate it and you never deal with it.
And that's the truth, because like you said, we will try to use other things in order to numb what we're actually feeling, as opposed to us dealing with what we are actually feeling in the moment in which we are feeling it. Because sometimes those triggers can be so emotional that you don't want to deal with it. You just like, you know what, let me, like you said, let me light this blunt. Yeah. Some people will excessively smoke cigarettes. Other people will excessively drink in order to numb the feeling and to mask how they're actually feeling. And it turns into where you're just literally just self-medicating as opposed to dealing with what happened.
Right.
That's good. I like that. Like I said, Mother gets us all the way together. Mother said, y'all gonna heal today, people. And that's what we're here to do.
Y'all gonna get free today. Today, you're gonna lift your hands so you can be free. Period. That's what we're doing. We are not being around here broken. We're not doing that.
That's the one thing that I can say, that I believe that everybody should want to be free, right? There's no sense of you walking around a broken mess looking good, though. But deep down on the inside, you just broke.
Yes.
And broke has... Go ahead.
Listen, that is like, that's the number one thing that we do. We always want to dress up when we're in pain. We want to look good on the outside while we're tore down on the inside. And none of that matters, right? None of that matters when you go out into the world and you put on this front, you put on this glorious picture, you have on all this makeup, and then you come home and your life is just trash. Like, you just crash. Everything is so unsettling. And then, it's kind of like when people commit suicide and look like, she seemed like she had it all together, right? Because that's the image that we want to give people. And we have got to get more comfortable with saying that we're not okay when we're not okay. Instead of someone saying, hey, how are you? And you're like, oh, I'm good. When you're not good, you need to say that you're not good. We don't know how to assist people or support people because people are so accustomed to covering things up that the only time that we know there's something wrong is when something goes really wrong.
Right. And when they begin to lash out, and then you're like, oh, snap. Something is wrong.
Yes.
And I think that is important, because I know when I was younger, you wouldn't have known anything was wrong with me until I lashed out. And it would literally be like a boil up of so many different things, to the point where you might have just stepped on my foot, and now I just want to rip your head off because you just stepped on my foot. But it really had nothing to do with the fact that you stepped on my foot. It had everything to do with the fact that I was angry about so many other different things, that you just stepping on my foot was like the catalyst of all of my anger that I had pent up on the inside. So now I'm going to let you feel the wrath of Nakia, because that's how it is. And a lot of us still do that because we have not processed through what hurt us, what has traumatized us, what has angered us. And I think that's part of the reason why I really wanted to talk about this month, outside of the fact that it being suicide awareness or suicide prevention, but also because at the end of the day, if we don't know what is wrong with us, and if we don't understand that we have triggers, that is what leads down to this road of hopelessness, right?
Yes.
And I just think that we need to talk about it. So one of the things that you did say, which was important, was doing a mental health check-in. And also, I guess that would be like doing a psychological type evaluation, like doing a psych eval.
So it wouldn't even be a psych eval, because a psych eval is more intense. The psych eval is going to test your attitude, is going to test your anger, personality. A psychosocial assessment or psychiatric evaluation without medical is what we call it. That is the professional terminology for it. But basically, it's going in and letting someone take a good history, a biopsychosocial history on you, your family, incidents, your family history. So when we're taking this, we're looking at, does anyone in your family have a mental illness? Has anyone in your family ever committed suicide? Is anyone in your family an alcoholic? Is anyone in your family in prison or have been to prison? Have you ever been a part of the foster care system? So we're trying to get a really good history of basically events that may have happened in your life, so we can say, you know what? So what happened when you had this experience? What did you do after this experience happened? And did you notice that your life changed after particular experiences? So a psychosocial assessment is basically about us having a good history and basically exploring to see, are there any events that could have caused a shift, a change in your life that you may not be aware of? Sometimes what people know is that something has changed and they cannot necessarily pinpoint where or when that change occurred. All they know is all of a sudden, I was different.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can't explain it, right? And it's when parents also see their kids change. When you ask parents, so when did you notice this change? Excuse me, they'll say, well, maybe around 6th grade. And you ask the parent, did anything significant happen in 6th grade? No, nothing happened. I mean, the grandfather died, but that was no big deal. Well, it wasn't a big deal maybe for the parent. Then for the child, when I ask that same question, did something significant happen? It's like when I lost my grandfather, I felt like the world ended. Right there, we know that there's the first point where something has happened that has caused this child to have a difference. And likely that, they're grieving. However, because mom's doing okay, and mom maybe expected dad to die, the child doesn't respond in that same way. They don't have the same tools that adults have. They can't process grief the way that adults are able to process grief and try to compartmentalize it and make it make sense.
Mm-hmm.
For children, they don't have the capacity to do that. So all they know is he died. No one explained anything to me. I went to this funeral. There was the body in a box. And that's the last memory now that I have, is the body in the box. I don't know where my grandfather went. I just remember the body in the box.
And that's the truth. And let me say this. So, when I was younger, when I was in elementary school, there was a young girl that was in elementary school. She was so young, and she had witnessed the murder of her mother by her father, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because when the father came into the house and murdered the mother, she went and hid underneath the table. So when they came and found her, that's where she was. So when certain things would happen inside the school, let's say a loud sound or whatever, she would immediately go run and hide underneath the table. And at that time, I always was a nurturer. So I would literally go, when I would see her do that, I would literally go and find her and hug her and say, it's okay, right? And the school, at one point, they were very sensitive to the fact, but then at another point, they got extremely insensitive to the fact, like as if she needs to get over this now, because this is not an issue anymore, because, she was living with, somebody else or whatever. But the truth of the matter is, you never know. Anything can trigger you back to that moment and back to that time.
Right.
And she probably needed a much deeper level of help in order for her to begin to process through the death of her own mother and the fact that she witnessed it at such a young age. Because I believe she had to be, at that time, I might have been in 3rd or 4th grade. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, she might have been in like 2nd grade or somewhere, somewhere along those lines. And she literally used to always do that, to the point where the school just grew very impatient and very insensitive to the fact of what was really going on. And people do not understand that when you're processing through certain things, especially like you said, as a child, what you think might not be detrimental for them, which I can't understand how they would ever think that a murder of their mother and them witnessing it wasn't detrimental, but they can't process it the same way how an adult might rationalize. Okay, well, you witnessed it. Now you need to, as their thought was, she needed to get over it. I'm like, I don't know how a child could get over something like that. That needs extreme extensive therapy. But that was always a trigger for her, and she always would run underneath the table. It would never fail.
Because her body could sense the danger. And so not only was it the witnessing of her father murdering her mother, right? That was one piece. But there's now the loss of your mother, the loss of your father, because he likely was arrested. So
Mm-hmm.
there's basically the entire loss of your entire family. So now you have to go and live with either another family member or a stranger who you don't know, right? Even if they're your family, and even if you spent the night over their house, spending the night at someone's house and now having to live with them and them be the caregiver, that's a huge change, right? And so for a 2nd grader, it's almost impossible to try to process something that doesn't even make sense. And we're not going to talk about what now has gone into her psyche from what she witnessed with her eyes and what she heard. And we don't even know the history prior to that incident. It's very likely that she's seen lots of other things before we even got there. That's why she knew to take cover when he would come in. She probably has spent her entire life taking cover from an angry father. Right. And then that was the ultimate for her. To now, witness it. And what do? You hide because you don't know what else to do. She knew to get out of the way to keep herself safe. That's it.
And I think that sometimes what we have to understand, that even as adults, especially if we don't get help as children, because we're not in a place to say, I need help, right? It takes a parent, it takes an adult, it takes someone else to step in and say, you know what, my child needs help. So now when you don't act and you don't get a child help, that child then turns into an adult that then needs help, because the adult still hasn't processed through what happened to 5-year-old me, especially when it turns into something that traumatic. So then you begin to have a chain of events that begin to happen, whereas as an adult, I don't know how to deal with aggression. So if you yell at me, that's an automatic trigger. And I'm going to retreat. Where am I going to retreat to? I'm going to retreat to a place of safety and cover, because I don't deal with aggression very well, because of something that I witnessed, something that I heard, something that I felt. And I think that right there is imperative for us to even understand, to begin the process. Why do we react certain ways when certain things happen?
The reality is that we get stuck in the age where trauma has occurred.
Mm-hmm.
You get locked there. And so, time goes on. Just because you had an experience, time doesn't stop. And just because you're 18, that doesn't mean you're mature, right? You still have the now responsive state of maybe a 5-year-old, right? So when you see adults who are throwing tantrums and things like that, something has happened. It's a very good indicator that there's a little girl somewhere that's wounded who is kind of ruling this adult's life. And so sometimes we have to learn how to have compassion for people when they show up in a way and you just like, are you kidding me? We can usually predict that, listen, there's some history there that we don't know about, that they may not even be able to put their hands on and recognize. And adults have done not a great job, I would say, in seeking mental health services for children. Most of the times when children present to my office, it's because there's a behavioral problem that is now present. So how long has it been? And it's always when things have gotten out of control or the child is at risk of being kicked out of school, but the behaviors have been going on. The kid is not sleeping. The kid is eating. So there's all the warning signs that says my child needs professional help, but people are very concerned about having their children to be labeled that they fail to go and get the necessary treatment that they need. If they say your child is showing signs and symptoms of diabetes, are we going to be worried about the diagnosis? Are we going to be worried about the child being labeled as a diabetic? We're not. We're going to get them everything that they need to make their life better. We have to do the same thing when it comes down to our children's mental health. Your mental health is more important than anything else.
In your opinion, why do you think some parents are afraid to have their children diagnosed outside of the labeling, right? Because we understand that there's a label. Because I know for myself, I know I've heard some people say that, oh, that's just a way for them to collect more money. That's all. They just want to check. And it's like, no, your child might need help.
I think that people are uncomfortable when your kid has any kind of disability, right? Mm-hmm. There is a stigma around disability. And so parents sometimes feel like it says something about my parenting that my child needs help. It doesn't say anything about your parenting, right? It says that your child has a condition. You are not a professional. You're the mother, and you need to seek out whatever is going to give your child a better quality of life. And if therapy is what gives your child a better quality of life, you should be getting that. If therapy and appeal gives your child a better quality of life, then you should be getting that. We have to, again, destigmatize what it means to seek mental health services. People think that mental health is about crazy people, severely mentally ill people. That is not who is presenting into the therapy spaces. Severely mentally ill people are in state hospitals or are walking around on the street untreated. It's everyday common people that are presenting into the therapy space. We have got to get more comfortable as a people about talking about mental health and about getting mental health for ourselves and for our children. My daughter, I'm a therapist, and my daughter, was showing signs of anxiety. And I said, listen, I can tell you what to do, but that's not what I think you need to do. You need to find a therapist and you need to go get yourself some help. It took her a couple of years to make the decision. I offered it. I didn't want to force her, right? She's like 14 years old. But I said, here's what I think. Now, I've told her everything that I've observed from her. And then she finally said, okay, I'm ready to go. And it was the best decision that she made. Do you think I was worried about what someone's going to say because I'm a therapist and I can't help my own child? My role with my child is to be her mother. It's not to be her therapist. And so we just have to do a better job at not forcing our kids, right? But introducing it to them. I introduced it to my daughter in a way to say, hey, This is going to make it better, but you have to choose it, right? Not forcing our kids, because I see kids who are forced to come to therapy and they come in and they're like, I don't need to be here. I'm not going to say anything. Okay. And it takes a little bit of time to work with them, right? So I just started with like, look, well, tell me about your life. Let's not even worry about what your mom thinks you need to be here about. Tell me about your life. And that's usually my way in, is to get to know more about the child, not about all the things that mom thinks is wrong with the child, but where's the child at in their own life? What are the things that they enjoy? But we just have to do a better job at educating our children and talking about the importance of them getting mental health services.
So, okay, what is the difference? And there might not be one, right? But what is the difference between seeking a therapist, seeking a counselor, seeking a psychologist, seeking a psychiatrist? Because you have all of these specialties within mental health. And I think that sometimes it can be a little confusing or a bit overwhelming to try and figure out exactly who you need to see and what you need to do when you need to see them.
Okay, so let's talk about accessing mental health services and knowing the difference in what. So a psychiatrist is a person who prescribes medication. So a psychiatrist is going to do a psychiatric evaluation with medical, meaning they're going to take a good medical history of your life. How was your development? Did you meet milestones on time? Are there any conditions in the family? Is there any family history of mental health issues? So they're going to explore more of the medical, right? They're going to take labs and do all of those things. So when you're seeking services for medication, then a psychiatrist is who you want to see. Now, in some states, psychologists have authority to write prescriptions for some psychotropic medications.
Mm-hmm.
So that is in some states. But primarily who you're going to see, excuse me, is a psychiatrist. There is a shortage of psychiatrists in the nation. Okay, there's a shortage of psychiatrists and they're very difficult to come by. And so sometimes you will find that your regular medical doctor will prescribe some medications for you. And a psychiatrist is a medical doctor. They have gone to medical school. Okay. Psychologists will provide therapy, but psychologists also do testing. So they are the ones that if you want to substantiate like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder for your children, if your child has like a school individualized education plan, that is usually going to be substantiated through a psychological evaluation where they run tests, they test your IQ, they give you series of all kinds of tests to determine where is your level of functioning. Is there any disability that they've identified from the way that you've answered the questions on the test? So a psychological evaluation is going to be an in-depth test along with a face-to-face interview about your history. But most of the answers and how they're going to come up with the conclusion is going to be based on the series of tests that they give you and how you answer them. They score these tests and then they give you a comprehensive evaluation of everything that they found. And then they make recommendations about what type of treatment do they believe would be best for what they've identified from your test. Okay. So that's it for psychologists. Counselors, social workers, licensed marriage and family therapists. We all provide counseling. The difference is the training. Some has more clinical time, some is more specific focus. Social work is probably a more broad spectrum because we look at everything. We do a lot of case management. We try to figure out how to meet all of the needs of this family while servicing them. Counselors are specific to providing counseling services. That has been where all of their attention in school has been focused on. Licensed marriage and family therapist is looking at the family in terms of how they have trained. But across the board, when we look at LPC, LCSW, and LMFT, these people are kind of at the same level. They are master's level clinicians who are providing therapy services.
So basically, you could start out at the counselor level and then let a counselor refer you out based on where you could, basically based on what your need is.
Yeah, so if you came to me and I identified like, hey, I think your child may have ADHD, they have all the symptoms. We can diagnose ADHD, but it just looks better to have it substantiated through testing. And so I would say you might want to consider a psychological evaluation for your child. If your child comes and we've done everything and, it seems like, your child is in need of medication and you recognize that for the last 7 years, their attention span has gotten worse, worse, and worse, right? Then I may say, okay, it sounds like you need to be evaluated by a psychiatrist, maybe to be considered for medication. So we can make the recommendation and the referral for you, or just, say, hey, here's what we think is going to be the best course of treatment. It is our duty and responsibility that if we are not the best option for your child, to refer out. That is always your number one duty, is not to practice out of your scope. Do not ever practice out of the scope in which you are, able to do that. And so you should always have, referral sources where you can send your clients when you know that they need something maybe in addition to what you're doing or something other than what you're doing.
And I guess also for depending upon what your actual, because then you come up with a treatment plan, right? Like there's like a plan for the treatment outside of, whatever the treatment plan is going to be. Because I know, I guess like some people, depending upon their diagnosis, some people can be hospitalized. Some people can do part hospitalization, part from home. Other people can do, I guess there's like some type of like intense programs in which, but all of that is basically determined at the time in which you actually go through like your some type of evaluation, some type of intake for someone to be able to assess what exactly your need is.
Right. And that, again, that can come from us. So when we talk about those other programs, we're talking about higher levels of care. So there is, excuse me, partial hospitalization program, also known as a PHP. And this is where basically your child or an adult can spend maybe 6 to 8 hours a day going to programming that is for a specific reason. So let's say if they're going to go to a PHP program for depression, they may go to that program 5 days a week for 8 hours a day, where they're basically participating in individual therapy and group therapy to learn more skills to improve their condition. Okay. If a client goes into the hospital, so there's this idea that when people go into the hospital for an inpatient hospitalization for psychiatric, the role of the inpatient unit is simply to stabilize a client and return them to the community. Sometimes people say, well, my child was admitted to the hospital and they were only there for 5 days. Well, in 5 days, they may have stabilized and there was no reason for the child or the adult to remain in the hospital. So the appropriate thing to do is to discharge. Gone are the days where you are in an inpatient unit for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. When you start getting into that time frame, they're going to politely send you over to a state hospital. Okay. You're not going to be in a local hospital in the psychiatric unit for that level of time. The role is just stabilization. So that's usually going to be 3 to 5 days or 5 to 7 days. And these hospitals are trying to get you out. And so from the hospital, you may be more appropriate for a PHP program. And so that is when they will say, okay, well, you don't require services in the hospital, but you do need a high level of support. And that's where a partial hospitalization program may come in. So for people who may need long-term services, long-term treatment in a very structured environment, that person will go to what's called like a RTC, a residential treatment center. Residential treatment centers are more long-term for people to be in, for them to learn skills, to have structure, to have ongoing support, ongoing services, pretty much around the clock, right? You kind of live in a residential program where, there's programming that's happening all day. You go to school at your residential site. So you're doing everything that you would normally do home with your parents, but you're in this residential program. And there's levels to the residential program where you can be, stepped up or stepped down. And so again, that's someone who needs more long-term. So people in residential programs, they're usually going to be there more than 365 days, and sometimes
Really?
longer than that.
Oh wow. Okay. And the truth of the matter, and this is why I just felt that it was so important to talk about, mental health, mental wealth. Are you really okay? Because what we might not understand is that some of these residential programs, like you just said, are actually, they can be for a year or longer. You hear people going into programs and it's like, oh, well, I did my 90 days. And then you come back out of this program and 6 months later, you're back in another program because that 90 days wasn't enough. And I know that a lot of it sometimes has to do with people are able to check themselves out.
If you voluntarily admit, then you can usually voluntarily discharge. Now, if you were admitted against your will, you are not checking yourself out. It doesn't work like that. And so oftentimes people will voluntarily admit themselves so that they don't have to wait for the doctor or someone else to give them permission to leave. And, typically we don't force people to stay in an inpatient unit. Of course, it is unethical to discharge them if we know that they cannot keep themselves safe. So we won't do that. We will keep them in. And at that point, sometimes it may require a court order for someone to be hospitalized against their will. Okay. So, there's levels to this thing. But, the thing is that making sure that you get assessed. And oftentimes when someone presents and they need to be hospitalized, that probably has been already brewing for some time, that, it just has gotten to a place now where, it's out of control. This person hasn't slept in 2 to 3 to 4 days. Well, that's someone that is in a very manic state and needed to be in the hospital several days ago. And sometimes families, they miss it. Like they will miss the mark that, I noticed that she wasn't sleeping, but I didn't think anything of it. And they don't think anything of it until they start to say things that don't make sense, right? They start to say things and it's like, what are you talking about? And then they're like, she's not acting like herself. And at that point, like, the person, needs to be in the hospital and they, need to be under medical care. And, of course, you want to rule out all things medical before you are admitted into a psychiatric unit. They're going to look at, is there any medical condition that may better describe this behavior? And once you're cleared medically, then you're going up to a psychiatric unit where they can further assess and treat.
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
And I think we need to definitely have more conversations concerning mental health and mental health resources, right? Because also being responsible enough for early detection, especially if you are a parent and you have your own child and you begin to realize something just might not be right and something might be wrong. And so that when the child then becomes an adult, at least they know some of the tools in which they can use and utilize, and they've already been equipped, and then they can take it even further in order to help them, within their own mental health journey as an adult. I just think that is so imperative. And I want to ask this because I know sometimes parents like to control the environment of their child when their child is receiving counseling. Have you ever experienced certain things like that where, a child might come in for counseling and then it's as if the parent wants to overpower the counseling so that the child is still yet muted?
So the way I work is that I'm going to talk to the parents at the intake. And during the intake, I set up the expectations for therapy. And typically what I ask parents to please stay out of the therapeutic space, meaning I'm not talking to you after every session with your child. I want to build alliance with the child and the child give me permission to be able to talk to their parents. And it doesn't matter the age of the child. Even with my littles, I'll say, hey, I need to talk to mommy about this. Do you think it would be okay if mommy comes in and we talk to her together? Okay. And it's because we want to give the kids room. Now, with my adolescents and teens, I tell my parents, listen, I need you to stay out of the therapeutic space. If your kid comes and tells me something, unless their life is in danger, I'm not telling you, right? Everything doesn't need to be reported to the parent. Now, the parents do still have a right to their children's mental health records. If a parent came and said, hey, I want my child's mental health records so that they can see what's happening in therapy, I'm going to give them the records, but I'm also going to give them a nice discharge and a warm handoff to another therapist, because at that point, to me, that's a disruption in the therapeutic relationship. And I want that child to feel like I have a safe place where I can express how I feel and what's happening without my mother or my father intruding on what I'm talking to the therapist about. The end goal is, what is it that the parents want to see? So I try to say to the parents, what you need to be sure of is that we're working towards making your child's life better. Mm-hmm. And you don't necessarily need to be a part of that process. And I tell the parents and I reassure them that if something is happening that requires them to be brought in, I'm going to bring the parent in. I'm going to get the child's permission. But what I'm going to do is prepare the child to have that conversation with their parents, so that I am not the person that's communicating for the child, that the child is learning to communicate tough things and uncomfortable things to their parents while I support them. But there are a lot of times where you do have parents who want to come in and they will use therapy and say, well, just wait till next week and I'm going to tell your therapist. And as soon as you come to get the child, the parent is like, well, let me tell you what they did. And let me tell you. And I say, whoa. No. We won't do that. If there's anything you need to talk to me about, we will talk offline, because I don't want that child to feel like you just come here to tell everything that they did bad. When I have a parent that does that, I'll say, okay, so tell me what all they did really well for the last week.
Right.
And parents will struggle there, but they have a list of things that, have gone bad. And so it's like, okay, if you can identify one thing that this child did well, I also know that this is not necessarily just a child who needs to be in therapy. You need some parenting skills, and you need to be in therapy too.
Now that's important. And would you say that, not necessarily that you would take the same road or the same avenue with an adult, but it's still important to form that level of a connection, that level of a bond, to where a person understands and they are comfortable to share with you, you know what I'm saying, what's really going on in the back of their mind.
Mm-hmm. So here's the thing. Therapy is really about relationship. You can be the worst therapist that there is. That's kind of like the truth. Because your clients don't know if you're doing it right or wrong, right? They have no idea. But can you connect with the client? If you can't connect with the client, you can forget about it. The client's not going to tell you anything. So I make my environment very chill, just like I am right now. I be like, girl, tell me what's happening. I say, look, your mama getting on your nerve. And they're like, she gets on my nerve. I hate her. I'm like, cool, you hate her? Okay. I don't flex, right? I don't respond to anything. So it makes the kids just blah, 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 blah. They just give it all to me, because I say, listen, you can tell me anything. Here's what you can't tell me. You cannot tell me that when you leave here, you're going to go home and kill your parents in their sleep. We got a problem there. But anything else, if you hate them, they get on your nerve. So what? Come tell me you hate them, they get on your nerve. So what we're going to work on is how to get them off your nerve and make your life better, right? Everything has to come back to making that person's life better. Everything is about building relationship. And if you cannot build relationship, nothing matters. Like, people won't connect with you if they feel like you're being so astute and how does that make you feel? It's very rare that I ask my clients about how something makes them feel. I'll be like, girl, what you think about that? Because people are better at telling you thoughts than they are at telling you feelings. And so once I get all the thoughts out, I'll be like, man, that sounds like you were angry. I may have to give them emotion that goes with it, because sometimes they just don't know. You ask about feelings and they be like, I think this and I think that. So I let them get all the thoughts out, and then I say, you know what that sounds like? That sounds like you were really frustrated.
So you assign the actual feeling to the actual thought. So then you'll be able to recognize when you have this thought, this is the feeling that's surrounding it because of this. And then you just begin to work through because
sometimes people feel bad. Like, they feel bad about, when it comes to parents, especially adults and children, they feel bad about hating their parents or being angry with their parents, because there's this idea that I shouldn't, right? I'm supposed to A, B, and C. And for me, it's like, no, if your parent did something that was hurtful to you, it's okay to hold them accountable. And it's okay for you to have a right to feel how you feel. Nobody has to tell you what you should feel. You know what you feel. And I give people permission to just be okay with how they feel and not feeling like there's this guilt attached to, I really hate my mother for saying that. I really hate my father for doing that. It's okay to hate them. And we can work through that so that you don't hold on to the hate and it impacts your life for the rest of your life. But in the moment of that emotion, it's okay to sit with it.
That's monumental what you said. Like, it's okay to sit with it in that moment, but what you don't need to do is hold on to it forever to where it literally begins to alter and change your entire outcome and your entire, basically where you're going in life. Because sometimes when we do have unresolved issues, whatever that unresolved issue is, it literally can impact your entire life, and it can impact your entire thought process. It can impact your view of things. It can impact your perspective. It just impacts so many different things to the point where you actually end up hindering yourself as opposed to really helping yourself, and pushing yourself along.
I tell people, listen, don't be sitting here stuck because somebody did something to you, because they going on with their life, girl, and you still sitting here mad. They ain't thinking about you. And every time you see them, they living their best life, and you still mad about what happened 15 years ago. I'm like, you tired yet?
Is your mind tired? You still running in their mind?
Right. Are you tired? Because right now they rent free in your head and you ain't making $1. Like, make it make sense. And so then that's like, you know what? You're right. So then people feel like, okay, I do need to work on this because it has held me back. And then I start journaling saying, okay, I need you to think about all the things you would have done if this didn't happen. Okay, so now it's not too late because you're still alive. Let's start working on those things. Let's process this pain so you can start working on this thing that you were going to do before that happened.
See, and that right there is the difference between a good therapist and a life coach, because the life coach is going to tell you, well, just work on these things for the future. Bump that. You got to move past that and this, that, and the third. But the therapist is going to say, okay, hold on. We're going to unpack this. Then we're going to move forward to this, because the only way how you're going to be successful in this is if we deal thoroughly with that, because that has been a stumbling, that has been a block, that has been a hindrance, that whole emotion. Because before you can really move forward, some things you gotta deal with.
You have to. You cannot just keep throwing things in the closet. I know that we were, brought up and raised to just not air your dirty laundry. That is so happens in it, in the African American community. You don't talk about your business. You don't tell your business. All you need is your family. Cut it out. That's not true. It's incorrect. It is not the way to do things. We have to talk about those things, because we can't talk about it with our family. Those same things that are hurtful to us is the same things that our families are laughing and joking about at Thanksgiving dinner, on Christmas, right? Those same things that we found hurtful in the African American community. This is the laugh. Like, we about to talk about this every Thanksgiving. And it's not okay. So you have to have a place outside of your family where you can talk about the things that are hurtful to you, the things that your family has done, the ways that your family has failed you. And the reality is that a lot of our families have failed us, and we had to acknowledge their failure and be able to just move on from it. But we oftentimes just want to be like, oh my God, my mom, she was the most amazing mom in the world. She worked so hard. She did this, she did that. And then I say, how did your mother show love to you, though, is my question. Well, I know she loved me. And she loved you based on what? Because she worked hard and she gave me this. Okay, so here's what I know is that love wasn't expressed in your home. Love and provision are not the same things. But oftentimes I will say, okay, tell me, when was the first time you heard your mother say, I love you? You know what? I don't think my mother has ever said that, but I know she loves me, right? They come right in and make an excuse. And I say, let's just sit with that. Let's just sit with the fact that you're 45 and you never heard your mother say, I love you.
Right.
There's the waterworks, because it's real deal. And you have to deal with that. Did you need to hear that, right? Some kids are like, I don't even care, right? But the reality is we all care, right? We all want to be told, I love you. Every child wants to be told, I care about you. I love you. You're important to me. But we fail. We fail in the Black community because sometimes we're just so focused on provision, provision, provision. We cannot get that time back. We have to do better at nurturing our children. We can teach them to be responsible. We can teach them to be adults, but we do not have to have this thing where we just raising all of these independent, not in tune, not attuned children who are disconnected from their emotions. We have to stop it.
Yeah, because then they turn into narcissistic adults who don't know how to form emotion, and the only thing they could think about is themselves and how they feel and how you're going to provide everything that they need. And I don't think we understand how that is truly what we birth. You
Yes.
know, when you fail to really show emotion and you fail to really show love, what turns what that can literally turn into in an adult really and truly is a personality disorder.
Right.
And
When you marry to a whole person and they're like, I'm just not touchy feely, I just don't hug people because then nobody hug you as a child. So you don't know that you're actually supposed to hug people. But physical touch is very important in most relationships. What's the first thing that the nurses do when a child comes out if it doesn't need to go to the NICU? They put the baby for skin to skin contact with the mother. What are we doing right there?
physical
Attachment.
touch. Mm-hmm.
Right, physical touch, nurturing and
Attachment
bonding.
mm-hmm.
And it's important. And when you haven't had it, you struggle and you don't know how to give it. And then you don't give it to your children. Then your children don't know how to give it. And then they don't give it to their children. And the cycle just goes on and on. And then people look at you like, we don't hug in my family. I'm like, what do you mean you don't hug in your family? What?
We don't
That
express
doesn't make
emotion
sense
in
to
our
me.
family.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That is exactly what people say is we don't talk about feelings. We're just, we don't deal with it. And so everything can't be under the rug. What happens when you pull the rug back?
All that stuff get exposed.
All of it gets exposed and then everybody is upset about it.
Right. And now you stuck unpacking it. And now you got to deal with all these emotions that you never dealt with before because you didn't know that you could have them. And now you're just like a big old waterworks. And it's hard. I think that's why I like the fact of how you deal with children, because sometimes if we can truly nip it in the bud at that early formative age, and then if we can then make parents aware and have the conversation so that they begin to understand how you're being devoid also devoids your child. Then
Yes.
that will also devoid their children. Then that will also devoid and it becomes a cycle of devoidness as opposed to a cycle of children being built up. And I think that if we just truly focus on breaking those types of cycles, within our own self, and the stigma surrounding getting help, because there's nothing wrong with getting help. And like you said, we've always had an issue with being labeled. I don't want my child labeled. Well, don't think of it as a label. Think of it as them getting help for what they need.
Right.
Right.
Labeling is the last thing you need to be worried about, honestly. I mean, nobody wants a child that's disabled, but hey, you love your child unconditionally and you don't worry about what society is going to say about your child. You want your child to have the best quality of life that is possible. And sometimes that requires therapy, that requires medication. You just got to do it and stop being worried about what everybody else has to say, because those people are sleeping at night and you up all night because your child is bouncing off the wall. Make it make sense. Make it make sense that you keep saying, well, he can't sit still for 5 minutes. Well, whose life is disrupted? Yours and his. Get your child the help that they need and stop being worried about what people think when people don't agree. Nobody is living your life with your children but you and your spouse and your children. So all these naysayers whose children don't have those conditions, they don't have a right to tell you what you need to and should not do. You know your life story better than anyone else, and you've got to start being able to think more independently and say, well, this person is uncomfortable. Well, that's their stuff. Let them be uncomfortable with therapy. You do what you need to do for your children and for your household.
And that's it.
And that's it, period.
Okay.
And when I see kids and I see that the parents need to go to therapy, I be like, Mom, I was thinking it would be a good idea if you sought some help for yourself too. And I have some referrals for you. I keep my referral list tight all the time because we can't just have the kids. So we're going to clean the kids up and then they're going back into the person who is still untouched, who's made no changes. What's going to happen? We're wasting our time. We cannot just take the child and get the child better and then put them back into that toxic household with those toxic parents.
So do you specialize in children and adults, or?
So I particularly specialize in treating trauma, but yes, I see kids and adults. I think I swing around a little bit because sometimes I get tired of seeing kids. So I'm like, oh, let me get a little more grown people on my schedule. And then I get sick of the grown people. And I'm like, let me get a little more children's back on my schedule. So it just depends. I serve both though, because to me, you know, I like to have a little bit of variety. I don't ever feel like I exclusively want to serve this. I do exclusively like to treat people who have been exposed to trauma. That does drive me. I think I'm meant and called to do that. And so I deal with the tough stuff because sometimes therapists don't want to go into the dungeon, right? And clients don't know. Here's the thing, as a therapist, you know, sometimes we're trying to only go where the client goes. Well, if we only go where the client goes, we ain't going that far. Sometimes we have to be willing to go into these uncharted waters with the clients and let the clients know we're walking alongside of you. We are not taking you through this process by yourself. We are with you all the way through. And so I am willing to go into the depths. I am willing to ask those questions that are really, really uncomfortable because I'm like, listen, stop covering stuff up. If you're not being honest with me, you're going to leave out of here the same way you came in. And then my job is not done. But my job is not done because you didn't give me all the information that I needed. So I have no problem asking for what I need. And I have no problem going into that place that every other therapist has been uncomfortable with going. I have lots of clients who've been in therapy for a long time. And they say, you know what? You're the first person who called me on my BS. You're the first person who was even willing to take me into that space because they get uncomfortable and the clients want to clam up. And I tell them, I said, listen, you might be pissed off with me after some sessions. And guess what? I don't care. I'll see you back next week. I don't care if you're mad with me. We can talk about it next week. And I have had some clients that come back and say, you really pissed me off last week. And I'll be like, do share. And I let them process that they were pissed off and what they were pissed off about. And then we get down to what did that remind you of? Because it's not about me. It's not about what I said. It's about something else in their past that reminded them when I said it of what happened back when. And so then we get into that and we deal with that.
I ain't got no words after that. I'm sorry. I really don't because
right, baby, because it's just like, look, come on here. Let's get free. We're not living no life of brokenness. We're just not doing that. I'm so against it. I'm just like, come on in here. Let's do the work. If you don't want to do the work, and it's so funny when my clients are referred to me from other clients, they be like, listen, so-and-so told me already that you don't play. Don't come in here wasting my time. I'm here to help you and you got to do the work. And I said, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be fun. I said, we're going to have fun and sometimes we're going to laugh. I said, you're going to cry. I'm going to watch. I'm going to catch all the tears and you're going to be better when you leave here. That's always my goal. I don't want you to come in here and you leave out the same way you came. What was the point? What were we doing all that time? But Nothing. If I sense that you're not doing the work, then I'm going to address it like, look, okay, so for 3 weeks, I've given you an assignment and you haven't done it. Tell me what's getting in the way. I'm going to address the barriers. I'm not just going to be like, okay, well, she don't want to do the work. I'm like, listen, so you still haven't made your priority list. So what do we have to do for you to give yourself 30 minutes a day to do my homework?
I mean, because at that point, you're paying me for nothing. I mean, and thank you for the money, but you're not even getting the fulfillment of the services if you don't put forth the effort to do the work.
I tell them it ain't enough money for my time. So if I'm not helping you, I don't want the money. If I'm not helping you, you can go on. I can make money doing anything, and they ain't got to be here taking in somebody else's trauma. Let's be clear.
Right.
I can go make money at McDonald's, sugar, and I don't even got to think there. So when I think about it, I just say, listen, if I'm not helping you, and if I hit a roadblock, I have fired clients before. I'm like, listen, you've been with me for 3 years and you ain't making no progress. You get better, you leave, you come back, you get better, you leave. I'm like, listen, I need you to go somewhere else and get some fresh eyes on you. And I mean, it's tears in this. I don't want to do it, Tamara, but no. I am not the end all be all. What we're doing now is no longer working for you, and I need you to go somewhere who can get you over the hump. And I don't take it personal. You've been with me for a long time. And so I think what happens then is that there's just a level of comfort where your client just feels comfortable with you. And then they just kind of want to use you to kind of keep their head above water, but they don't really want to thrive. And I'm like, no, we're not going to keep doing this. I'm like, at this point, it's unethical for me to keep serving you. And I will fire a client. I will. It's important to know when you're not getting the help that you need, and for the therapist to help you get what you need.
And I think, you know what, and I think that's a good place for us to truly, I'm not going to say end the discussion, but pause the discussion, because at the end of the day, you do have to recognize, even as a therapist, as a counselor, as a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever, whichever realm you function in, you literally have to recognize when there's no longer any progression within the progress. Yep. If someone is constantly tapping you out, if someone is constantly talking about, nah, we can't do that, we can't, then at the end of the day, they might need somebody else that they can actually speak to push them beyond the limitation that they've already placed on you. Because how can I help you if you keep limiting me? And we've been at this for 3 years. Somehow, some way, it might not be me that can help you, and you might need to. And I'm sure that's a little difficult to kind of like sever a relationship like that, because after 3 years of bonding, you truly do want to see a person. Honestly, you know, there's no time limit on therapy, but you do want to see a person with at least beyond where they at, you know?
Right. You don't want to be that revolving door for your client. So you have to just say, listen, this is not working. You guys have to do something else. And I'm going to make sure that I'm going to give you 3 referrals. I will call and check in with you to see, did you follow up with the referrals? Is there anything else you need from me? But we have to end this relationship because it's no longer productive for you. I'm not here to just collect your coins. It ain't enough money to collect.
Right. And especially if I'm not helping, like if I'm not pushing, if I'm not getting you beyond where you at, like you said, I'm taking on your trauma as well. You know what I'm saying? Because I have to listen to it. And then I have to then give you the structure in order for you to get help with processing through it all. So I'm taking this on, but me taking this on, and it's for naught, because it's nothing. So no,
Let me, before we end, let's talk a little bit about how people can access their mental health services. Because sometimes what I find is that people are like, yeah, they talk about this, getting mental health services. I don't know how to get the mental health services. And I think people need to know where to look. So let's start with people who, let's say if you have Medicaid, there are some states that your Medicaid insurance will cover mental health services. So you have to call your Medicaid plan and ask, is mental health services outpatient a covered service under your plan? Another way for people to access counseling services is through their employee assistance program. Most agencies have employee assistance services. It is probably one of the most underutilized services that people have. One, because they don't know what employee assistance offers, because it's very rare that the employee assistance program is pushing the behavioral health piece of that product. And so your employee assistance is a great place to go to access mental health services. And oftentimes they may give you anywhere from 1 to 12 sessions. And some places will give you 40 sessions of EAP services. And these services are at no cost to the employee for any contracted provider who provides services. So again, contact your HR person and say, do we have employee assistance services? And is behavioral health one of the services that are covered? Now, let me tell you this, just because your employer refers you to us for EAP services, they do not have a right to contact us and ask us what you were coming in for. But these employers will try it, and you call my office, you're going to get your feelings hurt. But I'm just letting you know, just because the EAP refers you, they do not have permission to know what you are coming in to counseling for. So you can tell them whatever you want to tell them. I need some anger counseling. I need some grief counseling, whatever. Tell them whatever. You need some life adjustment, life stressors counseling. And then all them details, that's not for your employee. That is for the counselor that you go and see. On your insurance is a good place to go to seek out what behavioral health services you have. Now, I'll tell you where you may hit a road with your insurance. If you have an insurance that has a high deductible, meaning it's $6,000 or even $3,000, there's a very good chance that you're not going to ever meet that deductible in order to have the insurance to pay for your behavioral health services. So what you want to do then is maybe look for a provider who will take you on a sliding fee scale if you cannot afford to pay their full rate. So you want to ask them, do you have a sliding fee scale? And that may be based on your income. So every provider's office, they have their own thing that they use to determine what the sliding fee will be for each client. But again, if you don't ask, then you won't know. The other thing that I want to say, people are very uncomfortable when they call and they say, I don't mean to be rude, but is a provider African American? You don't have to apologize for asking to be connected to an African American provider. It is within your rights to ask. Even if you call your insurance company, you can say, do you have any African American providers that are within 30 miles of where I live? It is okay for you to call and ask for that. So there, usually we have given demographics where we can say or not what our race is. And so that information is usually on file with the insurance company. So feel free to call that 1-800 number on the back of your card and say, I am looking for an African American provider within 30 miles of this zip code, and tell them to give you a list of the providers that they have that are in network with your insurance. So I think those are about all of the ways that you can access. But again, use your insurance, do your mental wellness check-ins, and you should do this annually. You really should do it 2 times a year. Just do it at the beginning of the year, do it at the middle, hell, do it again at the end of the year. After 6 months, it's a new assessment. Just go and get checked out. And if someone says, hey, I think you can work on this, then maybe consider working on it and destigmatizing mental health services for yourself. Because when you say, I go to therapy, you then give your children permission to say, I want to go to therapy so that I can get some help and live my best life.
Thank you so much, Tamara, for the wealth of knowledge that you provided on this evening. I tried to write down everything that you said. So if you guys really do, if you need the information, look in the comment section as far as how can you access mental behavioral health services. I also put in the comment section, if you feel as if you are experiencing or in a crisis moment, the hotlines that you can, that you're able to contact in order to get help, domestic violence hotlines, disaster, distress helplines, abuse and suicide prevention hotlines. Like, all the information is definitely in the comments for you. Copy them down, save them to your notes, just so that you know that you do have some resources available to you. And just also so that you know that you're absolutely not alone. Like, none of us are necessarily alone in anything that we go through and anything that we feel. And oftentimes, sometimes we feel that if I can't pick up the phone and call somebody, therefore I'm alone. Well, we got hotlines, okay, that is scrolling across here that literally can can help you to where you can pick up the phone and you can talk to somebody, because I believe that is imperative. A lot of the times we suffer within our own mind because we don't allow the thoughts to come out of our mind. So they stay there, and then, we begin to, our bodies begin to show what our mind is feeling, and we don't quite understand it. And sometimes we can't necessarily process through it. But like I said, Tamara, I really do thank you for the wealth of knowledge that you provided on today, as far as the services, as far as, the details into the services, as far as how to seek out the assessments, the information surrounding even the providers, the different types of providers that people can seek out depending upon what their actual need is. But one of the best things I believe that we can definitely take away from this all is the fact that get your mental health checked. Do your own mental health check. And there's nothing wrong with going to see somebody and saying, I need a good wellness check, right? I need to check and make sure that mentally I'm still functioning, mentally I'm still okay. And another thing that Tamara said, which is great, is it's time out for walking around broken and trying to cover it up and looking good with it. Some of us don't even cover it up well because we literally do look like exactly how we feeling. And sometimes when you get to that point, when the cover up doesn't work anymore, and now you're just out here just willy-nilly looking like how you actually feel, it's time to go get help for everything that you're literally trying to process through for yourself. So thank you again. This was really,
You're welcome.
I thank everybody that has literally joined for this month. I said it in all the previous shows, and I'm going to say it again. I am not a mental health professional. I am someone that does seek out mental health services, because sometimes when you do go through certain things in life, you have to realize that you need someone else to talk to outside of your own mind and outside of, people that you think that you can confide in. Sometimes you really need someone that can help you unpack it and then structure it in order for you to not use it as a place of being stuck, but as a place of literally moving forward and, seeking out your purpose and, actually finding a level of peace and also even a level of joy in the fact that you're yet still here to live through everything that you experience and to flip it and change the narrative. So this month has been very important to me in order to discuss it, mental health and doing a mental health check, because I just think that it is imperative that sometimes we ask people how you doing, but we don't stick around really to get the answer.
Or we don't want them to tell us how. You be like, hey girl, how you doing? And then somebody start telling you their history. You like, I ain't even ask her all that. Yes, you did, because you asked her how she was doing.
Because you wanted the typical, I'm good. Oh, okay, I'll see you later. All right. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay.
When I don't want to know how you doing, I'll be like, hey.
And keep
that's it. Good morning. Because I don't want no conversation. Good morning. That's it.
You know what, mother? What I'm gonna do? I'm gonna text you, be like, "How you doing, mother?" Well, because I'm not even gonna give you an opportunity just to say fine and keep it moving. I'm be like, no, because so and so. You know how some people do that. They'll be like, "Hey, how you doing?" You be like, "I'm okay." Yeah, well, because I ain't feeling like this and the third. You be like, "Oh, okay, wait a minute. I ain't even."
I didn't ask you that, sugar. It's too early. It's too early.
I ain't even had my sip of coffee yet. Wait a minute. Let me look. I gotta go get some coffee. I got to unpack all of this that you just said to me. Hold up, Paul. And because you don't want people to feel like you ain't listening to them, because one of the biggest things people gotta understand is listening. Having somebody that will just actually listen. That is one of the things that really can help people, is if you would just learn how to just listen. Some of us, we don't listen. We hear words so that we can respond back, but we're not actually just listening. And some people really and truly don't need your advice. They don't need nothing. They just need you to listen. And then when you finish absorbing all that, then you can come back with some logicalness and be like, well, how did that make you feel? Well, that sounds like how you said, well, that sounds like this. You're like, oh yeah, you're right. I was a little angry. I was pissed off, actually, you know?
Right.
And then you can get somewhere. So I really wanted to take this time this month to help people get somewhere, and that's why I've been titling everything Road to Healing, because I just feel that we are in a place right now. We are in a time right now where healing is just our portion. Half us, as my grandmother said, I'm social distant. She didn't say distancing. She said distant. That what she said. Nana said it. So I got to roll with what Nana said. So half of us is over here social distant, as she said. And this is a time for us to really process through everything that we feel within us, while we ain't got the crowd around us, while we don't have all of this stuff going on, while we're able to really just sit down and manifest. And I'm just truly thankful that all y'all, everybody that tuned in and listens, and then those of you that actually tune in after the fact and listen, because I hope that you're getting something out of this. Next month, we are still continuing with the road to healing. Because like I said, this is where I'm at. I'm stuck on this good road to healing. And I think it's a great place to be on. But we are going to be talking about surviving after a loss. And it's also due to the fact that next month is Rainbow Baby Awareness Month. So a lot of women and men will be celebrating their good rainbow babies, right? And I just think that it is imperative for us to hear and understand and understand the actual road to healing after suffering through a loss of even, having a miscarriage, or even suffering through the loss of giving birth to a child and then losing that child. So we're just going to have real people discussing real things, real women that have literally suffered through this, but have been able to see the joy afterwards because they've all had their rainbow babies, right? And I just think that it's important for us to celebrate women in that manner, because oftentimes, sometimes miscarriages are often like stigmatized as something that you don't want to talk about. We're not going to go there. We're not going to talk about that. But I think that it's imperative that we do talk about that, because mentally that is very taxing on a woman and also on a man. And I would have had some men that would have came on, but people don't admit to the fact that they, as a man, might have suffered through, miscarriages and losses and stuff like that. And sometimes they don't want to talk about it. So I didn't find any men that really wanted to come out and openly discuss it. So y'all gonna have a action pack with us women, okay? If there is a man out there, if somebody knows a man that wants to discuss it, listen, I have no area with adding you on, to the show, because I honestly like to bring a balance to conversations. And I honestly would like to hear a male side of it, because how does a man watching his wife or his woman, his girlfriend, whatever, significant other, suffer through that level of a loss? I think that's also important. I might ask my cousin husband if he join in, but anyway, I just think that that's important. Always bring, especially a male perspective to it. So next month, that's what we're going to be talking about right here on the Muzzle Is Off Podcast. So we will see you next week at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Get my time zones together, mother. Get my time zones together.
Get time zones together.
I don't think y'all understand. Mother got on me today. She was like, sugar, wait. You know what? I was like, you know what? My bad. I'm sorry. I just assume my mind, everybody's on East Coast until you tell me you're not. So, but thank you, Mother. Thank you, Tamara.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Nakia Monet.
You know, I love you. I said we got to close this out with Mother. Mother got to come up on here, okay, and help us and provide all. Let me tell you, Mother was like, I need you to have this information strolling across right there. Let that scroll. And I was like, I'm
help the people.
Help the people. She said, put the information, let it scroll across there so they know who they need to call. This is what we are about. We are about solutions. We are about resources. We are about help on this side. And we want everybody to be helped, because listen, we're going to come out of 2020 healed, set free, and good and delivered. How about that?
Yes, that part.
All of that. So then when we step into that good 2021, regardless of whatever a corona is, regardless of whoever the president is, Lord knows.
Shabbat.
Listen here, but we will yet still be whole. We will still be set free, and we will still be delivered, and we will be walking in the manifestation of whatever it is that we're going to walk into, regardless. Or as we used to say over here, irregardless. They added that to the dictionary. They added irregardless to the dictionary. I was so upset about that, because that really is not a word, but they added it to it. So now we can get it. So don't ding me because I said irregardless, because they added it to Webster. I don't care. All right, y'all. It has been real. It has been great. I thank y'all. Love y'all. Adrian said, great job, ladies. Come on here, AB.
Thanks, AB.
Thank you, AB. And I don't know, Facebook user, I got it. I'll check your comment. But they said, thank you. This was so very helpful. When y'all join in on these lives from the group, y'all got to click that little link and give StreamYard permission to show y'all name, because I'll know after the fact, but I don't know right now. But we thank you, Facebook user, and we're very excited that this was very helpful, because that's what we're here for. We're here to help the people. Ain't that right, Mother?
That's it. Help the people. Be free.
Be free. Okay, we're gonna be free in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, y'all. Love y'all. Until next week. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye, everyone.